Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John's report is for the 3rd of May. Well, we've had this softening here that we saw taking place with the falling daily DOC red, and we've been looking for this kind of situation at the end of the month because we knew that new fund money would be coming in from institutions around the 4th. And oftentimes what you'll do when you're at a peak like that, you get a little bit of a breather where they can get it, well, inexpensive or less than what it was price-wise, and then they moved back. And what we did was we came back to the green ABM yesterday, which was a good number because that's exactly what you would expect off a DOC spread, particularly with steel right here below the negative 13. It moved back above, which means short-term buyers saw that as a discount and started jumping in on it pretty quick. I don't know that we're going to see green turnaround. So the deal slowed in 29.02 and the low was 29.01. Bounced right off that. Moved back above the 76%. And you can see in pre-market, it's up about 10. So we're right within the expected ranges that we had from before. But this is powerful here because now you get a complete reset of the shakeout. So the critical factor will be first increase in that histogram and or a turnaround, and you've got an opportunity. Now, we also, though, from a short standpoint, they're a little excited because, hey, for the first time you've got magenta below the 15 level, which means that you can legitimately expect more from shorts. So from an ABM yellow standpoint at 27, that's going to be a little bit of the flex point resistance. So that makes it easy to play in between because from there, you don't have anything into the 100%. But below, we've got a few little ranges to play with, so it gives some added opportunity to focus on. And we saw this from the NASDAQ was a bit weaker initially when it had that much lower move. But you can see the magenta's still way over 22. So, I mean, that's just insanity how powerful that move was. And happening all during the time where everyone was talking about the end of the economy, blah, 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 blah. And despite all that, everything else was going to the upside. And miraculously, the Fed, doesn't do anything, which is about what we expected. Those that were talking about rate cut were just insane, same as the ones demanding more rate increases. You're in a modest inflationary environment. There's no need to do anything to disrupt what's working. So the euro, like we talked about, it was pushed toward the 50%, came all the way back here. It could be interesting here because if we get a turnaround at all before the full dip would make sense. We've already met the dip below the low. This was a pretty decent move, and now you have green over cyan. If red's able to break into a new zone, we could see that next push. So this would be like that A, B, and then your next run C. Not really expecting a whole lot because, frankly, Eurozone countries that are not in any position to be competing with what we're seeing out of the U.S. From a growth standpoint. The gold breakdown, no shock with that. We knew that it had to come back and fill this low. And guess what? It did. Okay. All done with that. And moving on to intraday, well, it was quite exciting. So this is the GAN function pay bar. So it's shrunk it down here, going from the previous dip the other day. We had these nice little buys that worked out fairly decent. This was another good one of those ABCs. Turned around with that strong up buy on a higher pivot there, but it's a little crazy. I just love it. Whenever you see that green move above the cyan like that, you know you're about to get something that's going to have a little bit more oomph to it. And then, of course, the gold increase. And then we had just a beautiful DOC spread. I'm just going to expand this real quick here. Give it a little bit more clarity. Right, like that. And so what happened was we started to get these spikes of the orange, and you'll see that sometimes where you're still having the rising reds. There's not a whole lot you can do, but right there when the green dips and everything's in confluence, the only difficulty you had was you were a little far away from this spike up above. You would have been thinking, well, right about here, when you get that move, tend to get excited. What I looked for in that particular case is, okay, am I going to get any softening of red, even if green holds up? and or will I get a spike of cyan above zero? And it really didn't cooperate a whole lot within that until we got right over here. And then it was a matter of, okay, I can take somewhere right between the 100% and the 76, giving me a pretty decent risk to reward ratio, and then it just cascaded. You had that turnaround right here with the orange coming across, and right about here, you had that crossover, and then the orange dips. And so the potential for a turnaround there was real, except for I'm looking at my shakeout down here, and I don't have any turnaround crossover of the yellow moving above magenta. In fact, you're just in a straight downhill decline, having dipped below the red line, so I was expecting at least that low, and so we didn't cover that position at that point, but did use the 50% just above it as a stop, and from there it cascaded lower and made a new set of lows, coming down to the bottom, which was interesting because then we produced gold, and you really couldn't do anything at the early part of it. Wasn't until right over here where we started to get a decent enough spread. So if we look at that spread between the yellow line and the magenta, 17 roughly to 19, 30, so over 2.25 points, which is enough to get interested. I'm just then at that point looking for anything else, and when I saw that separation, I figured, okay, it's going to be a little bit longer, but then we formed that second pivot, and we were just still higher, so at that point, anywhere along there, you can begin to get active with it as your shakeout is improving, and we got up to the 0 point, and sure enough, it took it right to the 100%, and we're just still holding off of that and continuing. So, and it's been a little bit murky, but nothing dramatic as far as not liking it, because the volatility ranges that we're seeing were dramatic, because this was excellent from 20 plus points of volatility, and that it's exactly what we were looking for, an expansion of that. So I think it's perfect from what our expectations are. I think that we're likely to see the supports hold on this setup, and this is just an opportunity for them to get a little bit of a discount going into the next round of fund buying, and then from there we'll see what happens, because I would expect that we're going to get some kind of strong push with the new fund money. If we don't, then I think we're going to have to take seriously what's going on that daily with the DOC spread, and we'll also start to see it here on the 50K coming through. You can see the power mill bot. The more proper, improved buy configuration. This one was a little premature, because you can see we're still within the falling reds, falling magenta, and it took it just too soon, in my view, for that one. And so I'm working with the adjustments on making those clarifications. It's a delicate thing to talk about, because you don't want to stop them from buying all dips of red and magenta, but you've got to have that proper crossover and turnaround from at least the histogram standpoint, where you're getting into some strength along with the proper DOC breaking into new zones and that. So complicated stuff, but I mean, it's easier to see it visually sometimes than it is for the strict language to capture every little detail. But we keep adding to it and getting closer every day with them, and that's what it takes, just filling in all those gaps. So that's the long and the short of it for now. At this particular point, looking pretty good pre-market. I would think that some of it might fill back in prior to the open, in which case we would look for those, with these positive extremes. If we pull back in any of those, then I would look for those highs to be revisited going forward. Trade well, and I will put up any relevant charts as they're warranted. Trade well.